What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. I decided to make this video here because I like the background, so this is where we're gonna answer all of your questions. If this is your first video here, welcome. I'm gonna be answering questions regarding a solo trip that I recently took for my 30th birthday in December. This was my first solo trip ever, so you guys had tons of questions from Amy, were you afraid? To how much did it cost? How did you find the company that you went with? And so many more questions. So a little backstory on the planning of my trip. I actually wrote that I was gonna go to Thailand for my 30th birthday on my notes in February. When I wrote it, I was like, who am I gonna go to Thailand with? Well, if nobody wants to come, I want to go celebrate my 30th birthday and I'm gonna have to figure it out. I have already been working on doing things on my own years ago. Since I started therapy, by the way, pro therapy, I go to therapy, yes. Since I started therapy, I worked on going to places by myself because I grew up being afraid of letting go. I grew up of being afraid of going to places because I was afraid that I was gonna get taken, because as a little girl, my mom always told me,
agárrate porque te van a robar.
Grab on because someone's gonna take you. Anytime we would go out to the store, anytime that we would do anything, obviously she was doing it as a precaution, but she didn't know the fear she was gonna instill in me. And it took me to my adulthood of being afraid of being taken. It was an unknown fear that I didn't really know that I had. And I talked to my therapist and told her that I wanted to go to concerts at the time and I didn't want to go by myself. So I would get upset when my friends didn't want to come with me. But at the same time, I had to understand that they didn't either have the means to spend on a concert that I wanted to go to, they didn't care for the artist, or it just wasn't a priority for them. And I had to understand that. So since then, I worked with my therapist through that fear, and it has now led me to go to a complete new country by myself where I didn't know the language. And for the first time ever, nobody in my family has ever done this. Nobody in the history of the generations in my family have ever traveled by themselves to a completely other country. So of course, I'm the crazy person in the family, or as I like to call it, the cool aunt. I have just become the cool aunt. So yes, back in February, I wrote it in my notes and I said, I'm gonna go. Whether I go by myself or not, I'm gonna gift that to myself for my birthday. That's what I want to do. So when I thought of this, I remember I told my therapist, hey, I think I want to go to Thailand for my 30th birthday. I think that's what I want to gift myself. And of course, the woman that she is, she said, you have to do it. Now that you said it, now you have to do it. You cannot take this back. And I was like, okay. I started to do some research and I had absolutely no idea on how or what company to go with, because again, I didn't have anybody around me or who I knew that had ever taken a solo trip before. So what did I do? I went to the school of Google and I Googled solo trip destinations, solo trips, just everything about solo trips. Thank God for blogs, because I found a blog that took me through the company that I actually ended up going with. Obviously, I can be the only one that does this, and I've heard this before from other people in other cultures, la gente se atreve más, I don't know if it's the Hispanic culture, but the way that I grew up, everything was fear-based. Everything was something's gonna happen to you. Don't go here, don't go there, don't go alone. That was the one thing I always heard.
Do not go alone, you're a woman, don't do anything by yourself.
So the website that I ended up clicking on was tourhub.com. And when I opened up that website, it literally was an moment because they had so many destinations. I started to dream of places that I wanted to visit, and I went back on my notes and wrote down other destinations I wanted to go to and when I was gonna do them. At this time, Thailand hadn't become a confirmed situation. It was just in my thoughts, but I had been working through it. Earlier last year, I actually ended up going to Dubai, and I went with girlfriends then, so it was an amazing trip. But after coming back from that trip, everything and every other place that I wanted to visit, I almost got the urge to say, if nobody wants to come with me anywhere for the rest of my life, like I'm just gonna make it by myself wherever. Like even if I end up dating somebody who's not into traveling, I'm gonna go by myself because I am an adventurous person and I've accepted that for myself, and I just want to go and visit the whole world. So thankfully this website that I went on had tons and tons of itineraries. I didn't know if I wanted to take a 7-day vacation or if I wanted to do a longer vacation, but in case you don't know, flying across the country takes and can take up to 24 hours or more, depending on where you're going, depending if you have layovers or not, and depending on what time of the year you are going. Before fully booking this vacation, I looked into Thailand, I looked into the weather, I looked into the things that I wanted to do that caught my attention, and I was like, okay, for sure, like Thailand has been a place that I want to go to, and the best time to travel over there, it's actually our fall and winter here in California. So I'm like, that's gonna be perfect for my birthday. Again, I didn't know anybody that had gone through this website or anything. And I will tell you guys this, I kept it from everybody. The only person that knew that I was gonna go on this solo trip was my therapist. And the reason why I kept it from everybody was because the same way that I grew up and the same way that these people have never done something like what I wanted to do, all they were gonna do is tell me that I was crazy. They were gonna try to still fear into me because of things that they haven't been able to do for themselves because of fear. And I get it. I've gone through therapy, so I understand that fear is what holds us back the majority of the time from following our dreams and following our goals, but I just refuse to let anybody do that. The main inspiration that I had in my life, who was a solo traveler, who was just a rolling stone, to be honest, was my dad. And after his passing, I was like, there is absolutely no way I'm not going to go over here for my birthday. So it was very much inspired by my father, who I miss very, very much, but was able to come with me to this trip because he has already passed. So someone actually asked me, Amy, did you have any anxiety like going by yourself? Let me tell you, yes, but not until the days before my trip. I'm normally a very positive person, and I'm normally somebody that tries to stay in the present as much as I like to have plans for the future. Anxiety will consume me if I'm always thinking about what's gonna happen next or what's gonna happen tomorrow. The Bible talks about how today is going to come with its own trials and tribulations, and we will have tomorrow to figure out tomorrow. So guess what? I have put that into practice in my life, and I'm not perfect when it comes to it, but I try to remember to the best of my abilities, today's worries and anything that is gonna come today, God is going to give me whatever I need to be able to handle that. Another thing, I fully put this trip in God's hands. Before telling anyone, I was like, God, if I'm supposed to go on this trip, allow everything to flow effortlessly, allow everything to happen the way that it's supposed to happen. And if I'm really not supposed to go out there, please, whatever happens, I will understand. Just take me through this whole experience. So finally, I kept going back onto the website and checking different itineraries that they had. I was gonna take a full 7-day trip to Thailand and just come back after a week because a week should be enough, right? But luckily I had more time off from work, and I ended up running into the itinerary that I ended up going to, which was Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand. So when I saw it, it was a 15-day trip or 14-day trip. And when I saw it, I was like, this is perfect. I think I'm gonna take 2 weeks off of work, and I am gonna make it to 3 different countries by myself. Something that I was looking for on the website was making sure that the tour was fully guided. What that means is that there would always be a tour guide with you for the entirety of the trip. That was very important to me because, of course, again, I was going by myself. Now, I understand and I get that a bunch of people solo travel all of the time and they do it since they're 18, and some families are like, go travel the world, like get out of here. My family wasn't like that. And so there was a little bit of anxiety behind me going on my own. But something also that I wanted to pay attention to, because this website does have different prices depending on what you want your accommodation to look like. If you would like a hostel, it is much more cheaper than if you want a 4 or 5 star hotel experience. If you don't mind rooming with someone, if you're going by yourself, versus if you want a room by yourself, there is a different price. So I decided that I didn't mind rooming with someone, and that whoever they were gonna place with me, it was gonna be an angel sent from God. Luckily, if you guys saw my vlogs, you noticed that I was by myself the whole entire time, and that's because our group ended up being 6 people deep, which is not really a big group. And I was the only woman who was by herself. And so they would only room you with someone who's the same sex as you. They won't give you a room with opposite sex. So that was great. I didn't know that, but even for that, I prayed for it, because I said, God, whoever you're gonna put in my room, please make sure that they don't snore. Please let it be the best experience ever through the whole time. So literally, I was paying attention to all of the details. Now, what I've always heard about flying all the way to Asia is that the flights are what's expensive, and the accommodation out there and everything that you can do out there, and that our dollar is worth so much that literally you don't need a lot of money. And yeah, when I did my research, I saw online, based on what other people were saying, that stuff out there isn't really expensive, but it's just a flight from here to there. Now, I will tell you guys, I got my flight 1 month before flying out, and so I got it a little bit more expensive than normally you would. And I also got separate trips. I was flying from LAX to Vietnam, and because my tour was going to start in Vietnam day 1, and I flew from Thailand back home to LAX. So I booked 2 one-way trips instead of booking a round trip that probably would have been a little bit cheaper, but there's no way I could have done a round trip to either of these places, because I wasn't gonna start in the same spot. If you are, you can do that. The itinerary that I chose didn't have that option, and I was okay with it. For both of the flights, I ended up paying a little bit less than $2,000. I also upgraded my seats to the emergency row because I'm 5'11", and because I'm tall, I like the extra legroom, especially if my flights are gonna be super long. I did have a layover for both of the flights. So going from LAX to Vietnam, I had a 2-hour layover in South Korea. And then from Thailand to LAX, I had a 3-hour layover in Taiwan, which thankfully both of those layovers were perfect. I didn't know that English was a universal language, and I literally told my mom while I was out there, like, Mom, thank you so much for bringing us to the US and making sure that we learned English, because I can literally go anywhere in the world and people know this language. So like the signs at the airports, speaking to people, everybody basically knew English. Now, thankfully now we also have our phones and we have Google Translate. And so whatever language you speak, you can translate it into another, and you can literally have conversations with people, which is a lot better than I'm sure back in the day. But I will be putting on my description the exact itinerary that I took. You can also look at other destinations that you would like to go. Now, as I mentioned, you really don't have a choice on whether or not you're gonna room with someone unless you book a private room to yourself in each hotel. So I ended up booking the 4 and 5 star hotel option because I did not want to stay at a hostel. I wanted to stay in hotels, and I wanted places that were clean, and I was okay with paying for that convenience. So whatever it is that you're looking for, you can definitely find something for the price that you would like to pay. And if you're looking forward to doing it somewhere later in the year, you can start buying even your plane tickets now, and I'm sure they'll be much less expensive. The actual cost of the itinerary that I paid for, which also covered transportation the whole time that I was there, and the plane ticket from Cambodia to Thailand ended up costing me about $1,563. Prices range depending on when you're trying to go out there, but I will tell you the best time to go to South Asia is either late fall or winter, because they do have a rainy season and it is very, very humid out there. It was even humid in December when I went. You're gonna get hot. I literally didn't wear a sweater throughout the whole entire time. Another thing that I didn't know is that we were gonna get different tour guides in every country. So our first tour guide in Vietnam, I asked him all of the questions that I wanted to know, and also the group that I went with had already been on other tours. It was just my first time, so I was blessed enough to be able to have people that I can ask things to. And of course, again, I'm a very outgoing person, especially when I have to be. I feel like I'm a lot more confident now than I've ever been in my whole entire life. And so I will ask whatever it is that I need to ask to make sure that I feel safe. It is on you to get to the hotel from the airport when you land out there and when you're gonna come back. The tour guides will drop you off if there is a flight in between your itinerary, but when you're going over there, it is on you to either schedule a pickup with the hotel, get a taxi, or get any sort of transportation that they have in whatever destination that you're going to. I didn't know, but out there, they have something like we have Uber, which is called Grab. Honestly, because I was going by myself, I just wanted to make sure everything was taken care of. So I contacted the first hotel that we were going to be going to and where we were going to meet, and I set up the pickup service. I ended up paying like $45 to get picked up, which for over there, it is a lot. But for me, I just wanted to make sure I was going to have somebody there to pick me up, that it was going to be from the hotel, and that I was going to be safe. So luckily, once I got out of the airport, I had somebody there who was waiting on me with a sign that said Amy Diaz. Now, I didn't see them right away, but because I have WhatsApp, which is something that's used outside of the United States a lot, I ended up calling the hotel while I was already out there through my WhatsApp and letting them know that I was already coming out. And I was like, who am I looking for? Where exactly would you like me to go? They tried to guide me, but I was like, you know what? I'm tall and there's not a lot of tall people here. So I'm tall and I'm wearing red. Just let them know that. So the lady ended up finding me. It was really cute, and she had the sign, and she led me to the driver that was gonna take me to the actual hotel, which was beautiful. Everything felt super nice, and I was extremely happy with the service, and everything ended up going super good. That was great. After I did that, I was like, okay, I'm not worried about any other transportation because I know that after here, this is fully guided, so we're gonna be fine the rest of the way. I believe there are some itineraries that are semi-guided, so just make sure you're looking at all the details of the itinerary that you're looking at. Once I had booked my itinerary and my trip, if I had any questions, like, they totally answered and were letting me know. At some point, they asked me for my passport picture and passport information, which at first I was a little iffy because I was like, am I supposed to be sending this on the internet to people? It wasn't on the internet, but it was through email. And I was like, okay, like, you know, if I have to do this, I have to do this. A mistake that I made that I suggest that you don't is if I needed a visa to enter any of these countries. I just figured that I've traveled to different places and they've never asked me for a visa, so I should be okay. But no, out of those 3 places, Vietnam was requesting a visa. I didn't realize that until like the Monday before my actual trip started. And so I had to book a visa on arrival, which I believe I've talked a little bit about it on the previous vlogs. And I told you guys that you have to go through a third party. You can't go through the government website because at that point you're late. So somebody has to sponsor you. And I really didn't know because based on the internet, you know, the internet is always telling you watch out for scammers. And so I was like, am I gonna get scammed? I don't know. But God, again, I'm leaving everything in your hands. If I'm not supposed to go on this trip, it's not gonna happen. And you're just gonna make everything happen the way that it's supposed to. And I have full faith and trust that whatever's meant to happen is going to happen. Thank you, Lord. So I literally left it in his hands. And thankfully, as you guys saw, I was able to enter Vietnam. But please, if you're watching this, make sure that wherever you're traveling to, you double check and see if any of these countries do require a visa. Currency exchange is something a lot of people have questions on. I ended up changing my US dollars to Thai baht, which can only be used in Thailand. And I exchanged about $500. Now, a lot of people might think that's a lot, and a lot of people might think that's a really minimal amount. But let me tell you, I still had money left out of those $500 because, again, everything was basically covered except for lunches and dinners, any souvenirs that I wanted to buy or any little treats that I wanted to buy. Vietnam and Cambodia also use their own separate currencies. And if you ask the tour guide of the country that you're in, they'll normally take you to the places that will give you the best deal in return for whatever your currency is. So for that, you don't really have to change for every single country that you're going to. I did change at the airport like $80 for Vietnamese money, and those $80 were good for like the 3 days that I was there. There are some restaurants out there that accept debit and credit cards, but all of the smaller places don't, so you are gonna need some cash. And of course, if you want to tip people, you're also gonna need some cash. So someone asked me, how did I not get lost? I didn't get lost because I always stayed with someone, to be honest. Like, I always either, when we were on the trip, I stayed with a group. I didn't really go traveling anywhere by myself. And at night, once we weren't with the tour guide anymore, when I went to the night markets, the weekend markets to eat for dinner, I would go with the people from the group. So we exchanged WhatsApps, and we would ask each other like, hey, do you want to go here? Hey, we're gonna do this. The only thing I fully did by myself out there was get a Thai massage, and was get a regular massage and go in the pool at one of the hotels. So I wasn't really by myself once I was out there. I made sure to make friends, and I made sure, you know, to have a good time with other people. And yeah, like I really didn't want to be out in places by myself, especially because I felt like I called a lot of attention, and I normally feel like I call a lot of attention because I'm really tall already, right? And of course I look different. Even when I go back to Sinaloa, I call attention because I'm full of tattoos. I look different. People know you're not from there. And so of course I don't want to be a target anywhere. So I'm like, I'm not going to go to places by myself. As long as you stick with someone, you will not get lost. Now, when it came to nervousness and anxiety, I said earlier that I didn't feel anxious until the end of the trip. Until I was literally a few days away from leaving on my trip. Ever since my dad's passing, I have had a little bit more anxiety than ever before for different reasons, right? That I'm dealing with my therapist. And there are different triggering factors in my emotional health that trigger the anxiety, or that trigger what's to come or what's not to come, and what's in my control and what isn't. And of course, going by myself to a place where I don't know the language and I don't know anybody and nobody has my back and I have to protect myself brings anxiety on its own, right? So some people might say, well, you put yourself in this place. Well, yeah, but if I allow anxiety to hold me back, or fear to hold me back, I'm never going to do the things that I want to do. And I just refuse to let fear hold me back from following my dreams and from doing the things that I want to do in this life. We only get one life. And I refuse to live it how most people live it, which is fear-based. So I was nervous. I was a little bit anxious. I haven't even told you guys when I told my mom, right? Like, I decided to tell my mom when I had other people there. So my whole family was actually together when I came out, and I was like, hey, like, I'm gonna go to Thailand for my birthday. And so my sister was like, okay, cool. Hadn't said I was going alone, right? And then mom's like, who are you going with? That's like her question number one. And I was like, I'm actually gonna go by myself. And she was like,
What do you mean? Nobody wants to go? Like, have you asked anybody?
and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna ask.
But why are you gonna ask?
And I was like, because I'm gonna start telling people I'm gonna go, and if anybody wants to come, they're more than welcome to come. But I'm not going to base my birthday present that I want to give myself and get disappointed when I try to tell the whole world who wants to come and people start bailing for whatever reason. I just refuse to do that for myself. So I literally told my mom, why would you like to come? And she was like,
No, like, I'm not gonna go.
Mom doesn't really go anywhere. She goes to Mexico and here, that's it. And by Mexico, I mean Sinaloa. Like, I think this next year she's gonna be finally going somewhere, but it's like still Mexico, you know? So I told her, okay, if you're not willing to come, then why are you telling me not to go?
Amy, estás loca. What are you doing? Like, what do you mean you're gonna go by yourself?
And then, of course, in that moment, everybody was like, you're stressing me out. And I'm like, I'm still gonna go. Like, I've already booked it. I'm just letting you guys know that that's what I will be doing for my birthday. So all I'm asking for is support. Mom's a Christian woman, and so I also told her, like, Mom, this is the way that I talk to her most times, right? Whenever she thinks I'm doing something that's lucrative, I literally said, if God wants me to go, I will be there. If God doesn't want me to go, he's gonna do whatever he can to not allow me to go. I said, but this is why, as my mom, I don't tell you things until I've already done them most times, or until things have already happened. Because I said, you are fearful of the plane, of the ride, of the people, of the place, of not knowing, of everything. I said, because you believe that you have to be in control of everything. I said, and that's all of us. All of us want to be in control, but I refuse to allow that to stop me. So either you support me or I stop telling you, and I'm not going to tell you anything else about this trip. And, you know, obviously the conversation, every time I talk to my family, especially to my mom, there is a lot of jokes. I have a lot of dark humor, you know, trauma. What can I say? But I literally told her, like, I was like, you either support me or you don't. And if you don't, it's okay. I'm still gonna go. I just wanted to let you know because I want to start telling you things because you want me to tell you things and I want to tell you things. But in order for me to tell you things, I have to trust that you are not going to try to stop me to follow my dreams, basically. This is why they tell you, don't tell people what you're doing until you do it. Because then what happens is they start talking negatively, fear-based thoughts that then make you question what you should be doing when your first instinct was to do something that you might have never tried to do, which is why I said earlier, and I've said it before and I'll continue to say, stop asking people for advice on things that they have never done, because they're just going to tell you you're crazy. And they're just going to tell you that you shouldn't do it. Anyways, long story short, going back to the whole anxiety, a few days before leaving, obviously I didn't tell my mom about me needing a visa and not having it, because I was like, that I'll figure it out. If I'm not supposed to go, it's not gonna happen. I think like 2 weeks before my actual trip, you know, like I was so excited, and I talked to my mom every day after work, and so she would ask me like, hey, like, how are you? And I'd tell her like, oh, I'm so excited, I'm getting everything ready, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And she would always throw in her little comments of like,
ay, Amy, like, me preocupas. Ay, Amy, me estresas. Ay, Amy, like this and that.
And then finally I told her, if you just don't want me to talk about it anymore with you, I don't have to, Mom. Like, I really don't have to. And she's like, no, but I want to know. And I'm like, you want me to tell you and you want to know, but then you're telling me that I stress you out, and that's not my intention. I don't want to stress you out. So if I do, let's just not be there. We don't have to have this conversation. So of course there were times when, you know, the conversation escalated a little bit, never disrespectful, but sometimes as a daughter, as a woman, as a person with whomever you're talking to, you have to set boundaries. You have to know that whatever you want to do, if you want to do it, it's your life, and it's up to you to listen to other people's opinions, but you really don't have to. So long story short, I ended up going, and I talked to her throughout the whole time that I was out there, and she loved everything. I kept sharing pictures with my family, and I kept telling them where I was at. We have a group chat, you know, all of us, and so I just kept sharing with them information and just where I was all the time and how safe I felt, of course, because that was what it was. So I talked to my mom every single day. And until the day, which was the last day in Thailand, when I went with the elephants and I just showed her and I told her everything that I felt, she literally was like, you look so cute. Like, you look like the little girl. I remember you just being so happy and so this. And I was like, I'm so happy that I came, Mom. And like, thank you for supporting me, you know, this whole time. And she told me, you know, like, Amy, it's so crazy how God works through people on different things. And you know, he said he's working on my faith through you. He said, because you kept telling me that if God didn't want you to be on this trip, you weren't gonna make it, because he would do anything to not make you go. But because you ended up all the way out there and you are fine and everything is going so well, like that just allows my faith to grow. And I'm like, well, I'm so glad that you're looking at it that way, because that's truly how it is, right? We're all vessels in someone's story. And here's the thing, we can either speak life into people or we can curse them. So that was, you know, something that I told her. I was like, you need to let me fly, you know, like I know that you're my mom and I'm not a mother yet, and I don't know the feelings that you felt, and I'm sorry that, you know, I happen to be the wild child that wanted to do things on her own and that wasn't gonna wait for anybody to do things in her life. And I'm happy that I get to now be used as a vessel in your life for you to grow your faith. So just saying. So for those of you guys that are scared, sometimes you just have to jump. There's no other way to put it. Sometimes you just have to jump. And I'm here as the example that you can do it, because I did it, and you're gonna be good and you're gonna be safe, and you don't need a lot of money. The total of my whole entire trip with the flights, and again, you can get them cheaper depending, you know, I waited last minute. You don't have to wait last minute to book your actual flight. So I ended up spending on the flight, just say $2,000, and then the actual itinerary was $1,500, so that was $3,500. And then I took $500 to spend on souvenirs and food. So approximately maybe like $4,000, $4,200. And that's also because, as I mentioned, my airplane tickets, I paid extra for my flights because of the extra leg room. You don't have to. It probably would have been like $200 less if you don't pay for that, so you should be fine. One of the last things that a lot of people had questions on was safety gadgets. What did I use? And did I use anything for hotel rooms, hotel doors, pepper spray, anything like that? I just took God with me. God and Dad were with me. Those were my safety gadgets. I literally did not take absolutely anything for safety. I am not your typical person that says better safe than sorry. No, because I'm truly trying to walk by faith in everything that I do. So of course, again, I'm not gonna put myself in situations like, let me go out to the bar by myself and see better safe than sorry, because what if something happens? Well, I'm not gonna put myself in a situation like that. I'm also very intuitive, so I listen to how I feel about things. If I'm walking somewhere and I have a gut feeling about something, I'm not walking back through that same place. I'm gonna go around. So when it came to hotel rooms, when it came to, and I know you hear horror stories on the internet about so many things, but that's another reason why I don't like to pay attention to all of those crazy stories on the internet. Because if I just fill my mind with everything that could happen negative, I'm just gonna freak out and not make it. So I'm not gonna be the one to tell you like, yeah, look into this and look into that, because no. So literally the only safety lock that I used for my hotel room was like the little chain that, you know, the hotels have. That was literally it. And after that I was like, all right, God, like I know I'm good. I know you got me. I know I know that I'm gonna get taken care of. Like I know you're watching and I know I'm not alone. So even, this is funny, but even before, like when my mom asked me like, who are you gonna go with, you know, I told her, I was like, oh, I'm going with 3 people. What 3 people? With God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, Mom. Like they're coming with me. And you know, like those were kind of the jokes that I would throw out, you know, to kind of like relax her a little bit, but it was the truth. Like, and then, you know, when things happened with Dad, I then told her like, oh, there's a 4th person coming. Who's coming? Dad's coming with me too, you know, like I was like, I'm gonna be fully taken care of, and I know you're not gonna be able to physically see me, but I'm gonna be okay. So I really didn't feel like I had to be extra cautious of taking safety things like pepper spray or anything like that. And that felt really good too, because I allowed myself to follow my bliss, and I allowed, you know, things to fold and happen the way that they were supposed to. I am normally also somebody who expects the best. I'm tired. I've lived so many years expecting the worst, and I just refuse to do that now. I refuse to think that everything I do and everywhere I go, the worst thing's gonna happen. If I wake up today and I have the gift of life, my favorite thing to do is being open for every and all of the positive surprises that God has for me today. I literally wake up sometimes and I'm like, I'm ready for anything positive you have for me. I'm open to it. I'm here. And just having that attitude, I feel like I notice those things so much more. With all that being said, thank you guys for coming with me the whole 2 weeks on this trip. Thank you for following me on Instagram and on TikTok and just being present there with me. Thank you for watching the vlogs here. Thank you for all of the questions you guys had. I hope that I answered all of the questions, if not most of the questions you guys had. And as always, please remember that this is your life and you get to do with it whatever you want to do with it. Whatever your circumstances are in this moment, however they look, that doesn't have to be your reality for a long time. And when you start to dream and you dream big and you allow your mind and you stop worrying about how it's going to happen for you, and you just have faith that God is going to make it happen in whichever way He can miraculously make it happen, you will see how your life starts to shift and to change, and how you start attracting much better things. So with all that being said, thank you so much for being here again. I hope you guys love this video. If I didn't answer your questions, drop them down below. For this video, I'm going to make sure that I'm on there so that I can respond to any of your questions at least the first 24 hours that this is up. So please tell me in the comments where you want to go, if you're going by yourself, if you're not. Just FYI, all of these trips, they're not just for solo travelers. You can literally go with groups as well, and you can book with multiple people. You don't have to just do it alone. And also remember, when you're out in other countries, respect people's culture. Don't be a tourist, be a traveler. Be out there, explore the world for what it has to show you, explore the cities and the culture and the food and the people, but respect everyone. We didn't all grow up the same. We all have different ways of living, and it is in your land. So respect where you're going. Okay, ahora sí. I love you guys. Until next time, bye.